Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs Podcast. It is Saturday, January 29th, 2022, and I'm your host, George Kerth, here joined by the two best friends that anyone could ask for, Tyler Snyder. Tyler, how you doing today?
The Titans were the number one seed and lost to the Bengals. How do you think I'm feeling?
And Cody Roadcap, can you just go along with that?
The Packers the number one seed. They dominated a game for 58 minutes and lost. But this is episode 88, so I am going to remind you all that Dez didn't catch it.
That makes me feel better, and I didn't even have to deal with an Eagles loss this week. So Dez did not catch it. And this week on the show, we're going to talk some NFL news and notes. We're going to hit some quotes of the week. We're going to preview the conference championship week, and we're going to give an update on our playoff challenge roster and how the standings are going here. Got an interesting one coming down the stretch here. Make sure you find us on thecouchgms.com and on our social media channels for even more than you get from this show. Guys, why don't we jump into NFL news? And we might as well start off NFL news with what was the buzz of the town in the NFL this past week. We got to talk about overtime because that Chiefs-Bills game, a lot of people are saying that it was basically decided by a coin toss because both teams' offenses were so on fire that whoever won the coin toss was scoring that touchdown. The other team didn't have a chance. So I'm just going to throw the question out to you guys. Is overtime broken at all? And what would your solution be to fix it?
Yeah, it's definitely broken because it shouldn't rely on a coin toss. I know that the way that it's set up, yes, your defense has a chance to make a stop, and it should be your team still needs to be able to make a stop to win the game. And I get that, but it's not a defensive league anymore. The NFL used to be a defensive league. It's now an offensive league. And with it being an offensive league like this, it's more rare to have a stop than it is to actually have a score, especially in a big playoff game against two offensive dominated teams. And I think we all can agree that that was the most exciting 2 minutes of football we've ever watched, followed by a really just letdown of an overtime. Even if the Chiefs won, but they won in a different fashion, it was just a letdown to just watch them go down the field, score, that's it. The other team doesn't even have a chance. So something does need to be fixed. I've heard different options on how to fix it, but I think that college has great ideas with overtime, makes it more exciting, but I want to actually take a look at the NHL. I think that hockey actually has the most exciting overtime of the sports because you get a whole extra period of play. Now in hockey it is 3-on-3 instead of 5-on-5 like normal, but that's a whole nother topic. But you get a whole nother period of play for both teams to battle it out. And then if it's still tied at the end of that period, then you go into a shootout, which is super exciting and heart pounding. And if the NFL did something like that, it would be great. Instead of just doing first team to score, game's over. If you go into the playoffs and say, we'll do a whole nother quarter, even if it has to be a 10-minute quarter, do a whole nother quarter, and whoever's winning at the end of the quarter then wins the game. That way, both teams have chances to keep battling it out, and you get a lot more excitement. And then if it's still tied at the end of that short quarter, then you go into a shootout, kind of like the college football rules. Start at the 20, both teams go back and forth till one team doesn't score.
Alrighty. I think you make some good points, and I like that you brought up the NHL. I thought you were going to, say go with like a kicker shootout, almost like that Bengals-Packers game. That was an exciting overtime in last 2 minutes, but there were a lot of missed kicks. That would be something interesting. For me personally, I'm with the whole, I don't want to overcomplicate it. I just want, my thing is let's just make it a 7-minute overtime. Let's keep it short. And 7 minutes, it's just under half a quarter. If you want to make it to 7 minutes and 30 seconds, because that's exactly half a quarter, feel free. But then both teams should get the ball. But if only one team gets the ball or there's only 40 seconds left when the other team gets the ball, you can't be like, wow, this isn't fair. You literally just gave up a 6-minute drive for the other team. Like, that keeps defense a part of it. You still have the opportunity to come back and win. We just saw Patrick Mahomes only needing 13 seconds. The Bills needed less than 2 minutes. So, short time left can cause for a lot of drama. If it's still tied, I'd play a second quarter. Make it and then 7, that would get us all the way to a 15-minute period. I feel like the chances of it being after that or tied still after a whole another quarter would be very slim. If you want to add in, in the second period, you have to go for 2 if a touchdown is scored to, try to make it. You can do that. There's been a lot of, rules out there as well. I know George is very antsy to jump in, so I'll let him do that.
And I mean, I feel like I've been changing my idea on what I want the overtime to look like since last year. I feel like we had a conversation similar to this at one point, whether it was in the off season or last season, I forget. But I was the advocate of the college overtime, except you'd start with the ball at the 50, so that you basically have to get a first down to be in field goal range. It's not like it's an automatic field goal opportunity if you don't move the ball. But I feel like hearing people talk about full quarter makes me think that is the best option. If they keep it at 10 minutes, I think that'd be great. If the Players Association doesn't want their players playing all that time, I think 5's too short. The 7 or 7.5 sounds like a good number. It's a half a quarter basically at that point. And then even if they do a difference, like Tyler said, between the regular season and the playoffs, maybe in the regular season, they do the college shootout from the 20 after the overtime period if it's still tied. When if it's in the playoffs, they keep playing quarters until it's over. I like the idea of them playing another quarter. I'm just worried that the Players Association isn't going to want to put their players out there to that much more risk, which is why I would still probably at the end push for the college overtime, knowing that it has a better chance to get passed by both sides. But the fan in me wants a full quarter followed by that shootout kind of format.
I was going to say, I think it is worth noting, you mentioned the whole, I don't even know if we have to really touch the regular season. I think if we went to a full quarter, like it's 1 7.5 minute quarter, 1 7-minute quarter, if it's still tied at the end of the game ends in a tie. I don't mind
Fair.
that
Okay.
game's still end in a tie, and we only worry about it in the postseason if a game is still tied. That could help with the Players Association. But then I did also want to bring up, an interesting rule. It was a leak that the Baltimore Ravens were going to be proposing to the competition committee a few changes, 2 of them revolving around overtime. Option 1 would just be a 7.5 minute full quarter that both teams would get the opportunity to play as long as your defense stopped them. And the other one was a completely different, interesting twist. We would go back to sudden death, but the coin toss would let the winner of the coin toss could either defer or they would get the opportunity to pick the yard line, and then the other person would pick offense or defense. So, for example, you could say, our 20-yard line, and then the other team would play, offense, or they would pick offense. They would have to go 80 yards, but then we'd play sudden death. You could say 50-yard line, and the other team could say, offense and only have to play from the 50. Adding some, your team, call your shot type of I think that seems like too, it's a fun way to look at it, but I don't see that actually passing as it seems too gimmicky. But I do like that at least there's conversations around it heading to the offseason that we could see some potential changes.
Yeah, talking about gimmicky, before we move on, I just want to throw out some of the most interesting fan suggestions that I've heard. First is the kicker shootout. Both kickers start at the 20-yard line, get a chance to make it, and if they make it, they move back to the 30, and you keep going until one makes it and one misses it, which sounds interesting, but nobody says, oh man, I love the NFL because I love watching kickers make field goals. No. So I'm not really into that one.
Imagine if they did that in fantasy football during the regular season, and one kicker, and it's 3 points a field goal, and one kicker just skyrocketed to 50 points because of overtime.
Well, it probably wouldn't count because fantasy hockey doesn't count shootout goals. It probably wouldn't count in that, but that'd be hilarious.
So the second one I heard was a 2-point conversion shootout, where you start with the ball at the 2-yard line. If you get 3 chances, 3 attempts at the 2-pointer, and if you run the ball in, you get 1 point. If you throw the ball in, you get 2 points. An interception on a 2-point attempt counts as 1 point for the defense, and whoever has the most points after those 3 attempts wins. Definitely another interesting one, but would never happen. And the Ravens would suck at it, so they definitely wouldn't be for it. And then finally, the last one I heard was a backyard football overtime, which is you get 5 minutes, and both teams only have 5 players on the field. You got your quarterback, you got your 2 receivers, you got a tight end, and then you have 1 blocker, and you have a 5-second delayed blitz. So the quarterback has 5 seconds to throw it. Then the one person's allowed to blitz, just like backyard football. But again, I don't see that ever happening. But it could be kind of fun to watch these guys play some backyard football.
Gotcha. I actually saw these. I have a few more, and I told George one of them. These also are very silly. Don't ever see them happening. But one was you just pick your fastest play on your team, and it's a 100-yard race. Just sprint. See, I mean, the Chiefs would
win
probably
every overtime.
I don't know. 100 yards is a lot faster. I mean, DK
You're
Metcalf
right.
could come
Tyreek
out of
Hill might
nowhere
not.
and be like the
Yeah.
elite one. I saw on the same lines a punt, pass, kick competition. Combine all the yardage, most yardage wins. And then probably my favorite, just because I can't imagine the NFL ever doing it, especially if you think about the game we're referring to, why we need to make these changes, would be that in overtime, you have to start your backup quarterback, which I think would add a fun dynamic to it. But can you imagine going into the game on Sunday after what Mahomes and Allen did, and they're like, all right, Trubisky and Henny, you're up. Like, what a fun, it would add a lot of drama, but again, no way the NFL ever goes anywhere like that.
Do the 100-yard race, but instead of picking your fastest player, both teams' starting center has to make the race.
Well, the Eagles win every overtime then until Kelsey retires, so I'm good with that.
You think? Again, we're talking 100 yards, man. He might sprint it, and then yeah, it'll be interesting. But
my response to the backup quarterback duel was: is it like second on the depth chart to start the game? Because say Mahomes goes down, and then like Henny's playing most of the game, do you have to put in like Darrell Williams to play quarterback in the overtime? Like that was my question to that.
We'll keep it whoever's number 2 on the depth chart. So if I mean, God forbid you're on your 3rd quarterback in the game, then you have to play him. But if you lost your starter, you'd have to keep playing your number 2 guy. But that's enough overtime rules. We're going to probably talk about that a lot throughout the offseason as they discuss rule changes. The reason we let off with overtime was because the coaching search is going on. It is still going on. For reference, the same date last year was when David Colley was the last coach hired. And as of this morning, there was no coaches hired. But as of recording it this afternoon, we now have 2 coaches. One officially hired, and the second one is finalizing his deal. But before we get into who's hiring, we do have to talk about who is. Oh, I'm sorry. Right, George's 3. There's 3 been hired. But we have to talk about a guy stepping away, and that is Sean Payton stepping away from the Saints. What is your guys' instant reaction, and how attractive do you think this Saints job is?
Not as attractive as it was 2 years ago, I'll tell you that much. There may be someone out there that thinks Jameis Winston is going to be the answer, and like an offensive-minded coach will go in there and try to right that ship. But the Saints are still in cap trouble. They're still losing a lot of players from that, even though they already started to this past season. I don't think that Saints job is all that attractive. And it hurts that they're now also behind on the race. Like, I get there's not a lot of coaches that have been hired yet, but a lot of places are going into second interviews, and the Saints are just now getting started in the whole interview process.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that. I don't think it's too bad. I mean, the division they're in is kind of rough. But you do have Michael Thomas coming back next year. You got Alvin Kamara on that team. You got Jameis Winston, who is a serviceable quarterback. They didn't make the playoffs, so they have a better draft pick than some of these other guys with some big name potential quarterbacks out there. Aaron Rodgers could be a free agent and could be a guy you can go after and suddenly make a run. But I know Cody doesn't want to hear that. I don't think it's
he won't be a free agent. You have to make a trade.
You know what I meant. Anyway, so I don't think it's as bad as you're making it out to sound, but at the same time, I think it's devastating news for Taysom Hill, I think, is the biggest one. I could be wrong here, but I don't think anybody in the league loves Taysom Hill as much as Sean Payton did, and I think that's why Taysom got so much playing time. I think a new coach steps in, and suddenly, even with that contract, Taysom Hill's not going to be as utilized.
I can definitely see that. I do think we might see like an internal hire. I know Dennis Allen has been the hot name, their defensive coordinator. So almost like that was the guy that they were grooming to take over for Sean Payton. So maybe Taysom Hill gets to stick around if he just brings, the offensive coordinator up and let him call the plays now or something like that heading into next season. But I'm with you. This isn't a great job. Sean Payton, I'm not gonna, try to guess what he's going through, why he decided to step away now. But I would have to think personally that the cap issues are a big part of it. And they're like $70 million over the cap limit. That this team is going to get gutted. Everybody knows that he's going to get a big contract to go be on TV. Especially, he might be the new guy with Joe Buck if Troy Aikman leaves for Amazon and to do that package. So he could be instantly like one of the big spots on TV. He also didn't rule out returning to coaching eventually. So he could be back on the sidelines. I do think the timing is very interesting. I'll say if the Cowboys don't win the Super Bowl next year, I think Sean Payton will be their head coach. I think they'll move on from McCarthy and go hire Sean Payton. It seems like Dallas has wanted Sean Payton forever. So that's a big thought. But unless you guys have any other thoughts, we should probably move on to guys that are actually going to be coaching right now. And so, George, why don't you give us the first guy that you want to talk about?
So first on our list, the Chicago Bears have made their hire. I'm interested to hear Cody's reaction. They hired Colts defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus as their next head coach. So that's now 2 coordinators the Colts have lost in the past 2 years. Cody, since you're the Packers fan, does this concern you? I think the Bears did pretty well here, actually, but what do you think?
I think the Bears did. I think this is a great hire. I think Matt Eberflus is a good head coach. You have to remember, Matt Eberflus was actually hired in Indianapolis for Josh McDaniels. And then he met Frank Wright and he worked it out. And at first, they didn't know if they were going to keep Eberflus because they hadn't worked together. But I think that just goes to show how good of a coach he's been. The Colts defense has been an up and coming one. And the big question is who is going to be calling the offense, because he is a defensive guy. He's going to get that defense back on track. So their offensive coordinator, play caller is going to be, the biggest, acquisition after the head coach. And the 2 names that they have been talking to are Packers offensive coordinator quarterback coach and pass game coordinator Luke Getsy, and then Pep Hamilton, former DC Defenders head coach, who was there for Justin Herbert's rookie year, and then was there in Texas and Houston for Davis Mills' rookie year. And some will argue that Davis Mills was one of the best rookie quarterbacks this past year. So I think Pep Hamilton would be a home run hire. As a Packers fan, I don't want to see him go to Chicago, even as much as that would mean losing Luke Getsy. I'd rather have that happen than seeing a guy like Pep Hamilton because I respect him that much as a coach. But I think that's the big thing. If you get either of those 2 guys, I think would be great for Justin Fields. So whether you have him in Dynasty, looking at possible options for next year, I think the Bears are doing it right.
Well, I think that your hire here is absolutely essential. Now, I'm not going to go out and say that Marcus Mariota is as good as Justin Fields. I'm not going to be that guy. And I know that I'm always going back to the Titans here, but I watched Mariota have a new offensive coordinator every season for his first 5 years on the Titans, and I watched him not develop. Like, he did not grow as an NFL quarterback because he could not seem to have any stability, couldn't seem to grow with any one coach. And now you're talking about Fields having his second offensive coordinator in his first 2 seasons, and the development of Justin Fields is paramount to your franchise. If you want to be a winning franchise, you need Justin Fields to develop into that NFL-ready quarterback that you thought he could be when you drafted him. So if you can't draft somebody, or if you can't hire somebody that's a good quarterback developer, you're going to be in the same boat no matter how good your defense is, no matter how good your head coach is. So I think this is essential. But then the scary part is if they hire somebody who is good enough as an offensive coordinator that he really comes out and shines, this is a guy that could leave for a head coaching job the following year, and you're right back in the same boat that Mariota was with a new OC every year. So it makes me a little nervous, but I do think Pep Hamilton would be a great hire. I think that he would be the kind of guy that would be able to develop Justin Fields. And if you can get him developed, you have some young pieces around him that could really grow. And the Bears could really be a playoff contender as early as next season with a good offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else to add onto that hire. So I agree. Tyler, with everything you said, and Cody. And I think Pep Hamilton's my favorite in that clubhouse. But I'm going to move us on to the Broncos, who we're talking quarterbacks a lot here. So I'm going to keep putting this one around the quarterback. The Broncos hired Packers offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett as their next head coach. And there was rumors coming out that if this hire did happen, this would be the Broncos making the run at Aaron Rodgers next year. And I've been saying for a while that I think the Broncos are a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. It might not be a bad idea for them to at least get on the phone and talk about what it would take to bring Aaron Rodgers to Denver. And Rodgers, knowing his relationships with other players, his relationships with coaches, that seems so paramount to him. That definitely makes that Broncos move a lot more attractive in his eyes, I have to think.
Yeah, as a Packers fan, losing Nathaniel Hackett is heartbreaking, and he has been an incredible addition to our staff for 3 seasons. He probably didn't get enough credit for what he was able to do. He helped bridge the Matt LaFleur system with the West Coast system for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers loves him. All the players loved him. There was numerous players, on Twitter today, talking about how happy they were for him. No one deserves it more. So that just goes to show you how much his players love him. I think the Broncos got a fantastic guy here. I think if they're really in for Aaron Rodgers, or I think they're one of the hot teams, right? You get the guy that Rodgers loves. If you can go get Luke Getsy, the quarterback coach, to come be the OC now with you put a lot of pieces into place. My only thought process behind this is, and Benjamin Albright, who is a beat writer in Denver, is like, Rodgers is coming to Denver. Like, he is all over believing that now. 2 things. The GM did say today during the introductory press conference, which he kind of has to, but it is worth noting, the words he used. He was asked, was this a move in part of hoping to bring Aaron Rodgers? And he said, absolutely not. Not just no. So he said absolutely not. So, 1, Hackett got this job because he's a good coach, not because what they're expecting to get out of Aaron Rodgers. And 2, I think the Aaron Rodgers aspect of this also comes into play if he'd want to go to Denver. George mentioned that, Denver is a good defense that might be a quarterback away, but you're going to a division with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. You got to play them 4 times a year. That's a big difference from playing Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, and Jared Goff. Like, no offense to those guys, but those guys are on different levels. And 2, what are you giving up to get them? Are we giving up 3 first-round picks? I think Jerry Jeudy's involved. They signed Cortland Sutton and they signed Tim Patrick. They didn't sign Jerry Jeudy. So I think Jeudy would be on the move for a potential Aaron Rodgers trade.
Jeudy's still on his rookie contract, though.
He's still on his rookie contract, but they already signed two other receivers. So you would have to think that Judy's going to be a piece in it. Will they also sign and trade for Devontae Adams? I think there's a lot of moving parts, but I do think this hire helps make the pitch to Rodgers, like, hey, come to Denver, better. But I still think if he wants to win, I don't see why Denver would be his dream location.
Well, I think we had enough on Nathaniel Hackett there. I think we can go ahead and move on. The Bills offensive coordinator, Brian Daboll, was hired to be the new head coach of the Giants. We asked Cody what he thought about this, having a divisional opponent getting better, and I think Brian Daboll is a great hire for the Giants, and the Giants do have some great offensive pieces that he can build around, except for maybe that quarterback is an issue. So, George, let me ask you, how do you feel about the Giants getting their head coach?
Well, I had to make sure it wasn't in quotes of the week, but there was a quote earlier this week that the Giants ownership group had said that they have done everything that they could to screw up Daniel Jones. Basically, that was their last pitch of, yes, we are definitely committed to Daniel Jones for this season. And this move definitely helps that. Brian Daboll is somebody who helped to groom Josh Allen. They're hoping that he can do the same thing for Daniel Jones. I do not like seeing an in-division opponent getting better, and I think that's a great hire. I think I would be more worried if I had any kind of faith that Daniel Jones could be a solid NFL quarterback, and I think he could be better than he was this past season, but I'm not concerned with him being a world beater. So because of that, I think that they're still going to struggle as a team until they move on and find their future franchise quarterback. But I do not think that they're that cellar-dwelling 4-win team with Brian Daboll there if he can build a good staff around him, because they're going to be a much more well-coached team than they were under these last few coaches.
I agree with George.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, Brian Daboll is definitely a better head coach than Joe Judge, in my opinion. I think he's going to be a better fit. So if Daniel Jones still struggles, it's going to prove that it's not coaching, it's the quarterback. So this is Daniel Jones' last chance to really prove himself if he wants to have a starting job moving forward. But let's go ahead and move on to the Raiders. It's a little bit of disappointing news because we are all hoping for Bisaccia to get the head coaching job, but it looks like as of right now, Josh McDaniels is the leading candidate to be the head coach of the Raiders. What do you guys think about this move?
Yeah, by the time this podcast is out, he'll be meeting in person with the Raiders, and it's all signs are pointed to him getting the job done. It sucks for Rick Bisaccia. It is worth noting that the Bears, Matt Eberflus, wants to bring Bisaccia in to coach special teams, which he was doing before becoming the interim head coach. So that would make the Bears even a better hire. But Josh McDaniels, he might finally get that new shot. This whole Raiders job, like, I feel like there hasn't been a ton of candidates talking about. We started it with being, oh, this is going to be the place for Jim Harbaugh. Now it's Josh McDaniels. It seems like they're just trying to get a name in there compared to, not saying that what Josh McDaniels has done in New England hasn't warranted him another opportunity to coach in the NFL, but it almost seems like everyone else is taking their time, really evaluating prospects, and to me, it feels like the Raiders are picking names over actual coaches.
Agreed, because I feel like at least 10 interviews has happened with all these other teams, and the Raiders, I feel like they're at like 4. And I get it, because I think Bisaccia should be the guy, and they shouldn't put him up against a pool of people that may not even be head coach ready yet, which maybe that's why they're limiting. Like, we know we have Bisaccia here who is a good candidate, but they're still looking at their options of maybe like the dream scenarios. Like, maybe Josh McDaniels is the dream scenario. But part of me still wonders, ever since the Colts situation where he got the Colts job and then declined it afterwards, if McDaniels still really has the drive to be a head coach, or if he is going to be tied to New England and Bill Belichick for the rest of his career, like, I almost wouldn't be shocked if he went for this in-person interview tomorrow or Saturday today, if you're listening to it on Saturday, and then afterwards says, I'm not interested in the job and I'm going back to New England, and then the Raiders are back to square one. So it is a two-way street. The Raiders could want him, but he may not want to go there. I think it's still an early story developing here. I've just always been skeptical of what McDaniels is thinking since the Colts situation a few years back.
Yeah, I agree with you there, George. I think this is definitely an interesting to watch, but I don't think McDaniels is the best candidate out there still. I still think that Brian Flores or Eric Bieniemy would be a better hire. And those would be the guys that I would target first. Bieniemy is still in the playoffs, and some teams aren't cool with their coaches talking to other teams while they're trying to focus on playoff games. Clearly, that wasn't the same with Brian Daboll. Actually, no, it is, because I forgot the Bills lost. I mean, I already forgot what happened this weekend. It was so crazy back and forth. At one point, I was certain that the Bills won, and then 13 seconds later, they didn't. But anyway, yeah, Bieniemy is probably going to have to wait until after the Chiefs are out of the playoffs, or depending on how this weekend goes, the Super Bowl is over till he can interview. But Brian Flores is still out there as a great head coaching hire. I thought he did great with the Dolphins, but there was some bad blood there. And one of the interesting things to note was we weren't in the locker room, we weren't in the meeting, so we can't know for sure. But the rumors were that Brian Flores was the one pushing for Deshaun Watson in Miami. And if he now goes to Houston, which is one of the places that he has interviewed for a head coaching job, does Deshaun Watson stay in Houston to play with Brian Flores if that's who he really wanted to play with, or does he end up leaving like he's been wanting to this whole time, and the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes becomes even more interesting to watch? But with that being said, guys, I mean, we were talking about head coaching watches, but let's go ahead and talk about the quarterback watch because there's some interesting quarterback news going around the league. Deshaun Watson definitely is one to keep an eye on, especially with Davis Mills playing as well as he did this year. If Flores goes to Houston, does Mills deserve to start over Watson? I mean, I know that I think Watson's a better quarterback, but with all the controversy going on, you have to ask. So, what do you guys think about the Watson situation?
I think
it's so go.
I was gonna say I think it's hard to really evaluate it until we get some clear answers on his whole legal situation. I think if we're talking strictly on the football field, I think he's one of top 7 quarterbacks in the NFL. But the allegations against him are severe, and he should be punished if they come out to be true. He should be exonerated if they come out to be false. But until then, Watson is like the big mystery basket item. Like, we have to wait and see. There's so much, like, you can't prepare. Like, I don't think the Texans are going to go into the season going all in on Watson or all in on trading him because you have to wait and see. So it's kind of hard for you to, plan for the future with that over your head. But that's, I think, where we're at with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I honestly don't know if Flores is going to get the Houston job if he is still all in on Deshaun Watson, because there's like 3 different parties almost that would have to agree to Watson still playing in Houston. One of them is the ownership group for the Texans, because they seem to be very against him still being there. Like, he was inactive all season, even though technically he could have played. There's Deshaun Watson, who wants out. And then obviously the new coaching hire could say, I want Davis Mills, I want to build this thing up, as opposed to saying, we want Deshaun Watson. So I'd be very interested to see, like, Flores would have to basically pitch to the ownership group, this is why we should keep Deshaun Watson in order to get that job, I feel like, because if there's a difference in opinion between the starting quarterback right off the bat, there's no way they make that hire. So I think it might give us a glimpse into the thoughts of Deshaun Watson if someone like a Brian Flores gets hired there. But like Cody said, it's there's a whole nother bargaining chip of the legal situation, and there's a chance he's not even eligible to play this year or beyond. So we could get some clarity and then still not know anything at the same time. It's a very fluid situation.
Yeah, he's definitely a candidate to be traded this offseason, but he's not the only one. There are some other quarterbacks in the spotlight. One of them is Ryan Tannehill, because he is not cuttable with his contract hit. There is talks that the Titans might try to go out and trade for a quarterback because they feel he wasn't the reason. He was the only reason that they did not win against the Bengals. But more interestingly is probably Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. I mean, we saw the Aaron Rodgers watch all last offseason. He ended up staying, and there's a chance that he is traded again this offseason. There's Jimmy Garoppolo with Trey Lance up and coming. He's another one to keep an eye on. And then Russell Wilson, he wanted out of Seattle last year, didn't get out of there. So now there's another talks of it. He might be traded this offseason. Do you guys think any of these 3 will be traded? If so, who?
I'm going to rank them from most likely to least likely. And this is as of January 28th. I'm going to say this can change, but I'm going to rank them. Jimmy G, I think, is most likely to be traded out of the 3 that you mentioned. Then if you ask me right now, I would say it'd be Wilson and then Rodgers. I think Rodgers definitely has the potential to jump Russell Wilson. But without going too long into it, I think when Rodgers sits back and looks at the best opportunity for him to win, jumping ships to the AFC, especially if the guy we're going to talk about in a minute, Tom Brady, does retire, look at the quarterbacks in the NFC. What are you going to the other conference for? Like, obviously you have to beat them in the Super Bowl, but you take out Tom Brady. We've already talked about the division quarterbacks. You have Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray and Matt Stafford would be the next, top 3 in the NFC, and they've all shown, times when they've choked. Don't get me wrong, Rodgers just choked big time in this divisional matchup, so I'm not saying that. But that is why I think Rodgers, at the end of the day, if he does decide to play, I think retirement is still a bigger possibility than him being traded. Again, as of January 28th when we're recording this. I think if he does come back, he's going to come back from the Packers because he realizes that's most likely his best chance to win.
I can juggle between putting Rodgers first on my list of most likely and last. But I'm going to keep him last because I almost feel like there's a better chance that he retires rather than being traded if any kind of move does happen. So I'm going to rank it as Russell Wilson as most likely, Jimmy Garoppolo as second, partly because I feel like if he wins the NFC Championship game, it almost forces the hand of the 49ers to say, how can we get rid of this guy now? And then Rodgers last because, like I said, I feel like if there is a move, retirement being in there is an option. The Jimmy G situation is the most interesting to me because it's going to be one of the biggest talks of you got this guy so early in Trey Lance. He obviously is still a little raw, but your starter took you to the Super Bowl potentially. Like that would be one of the most interesting moves. And it's much different than their Alex Smith situation years back when Kaepernick came in because Alex Smith got injured in the regular season. Kaepernick played the end of the regular season and the playoffs. So it wasn't like Alex Smith got him there and they dumped him.
Yeah, it's definitely worth noting that he could retire. I just don't see Rodgers stepping away. I don't see him ending his career the way that it just ended, losing to a team that didn't even score an offensive touchdown against you. I don't see it. And Rodgers just loves the drama, so I feel like he's gonna draw this out and make the media just explode over this all off season. He's not going to make a actual decision until the end of next off season. That's just my prediction. But
well, he did say he's making a decision before March 16th.
Yeah, we'll see. He says that now, but I am not buying into that.
He would have to because he wants Devontae Adams. They got to know what they're doing with Devontae Adams, and if he's going to get traded, he knows he has to get traded before free agency starts and before because he wants to get free agents with him. So he's even said like this decision can't last that long as long as it did last year. They have to come up with some agreement, whatever it's going to be, because he's so worried about his future and what he needs. And he also did say he's going to make the decision potentially on the Pat McAfee show. And to me, if you can say now you're going to make the decision you can't announce I'm going to be traded. Like you're not going to announce that on the Pat McAfee show. So that's another reason why I think it's either he's coming back or he's retiring.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't know. I've been so consumed by the Aaron Rodgers drama over the last 3-4 years where it's just nonstop something. We all made fun of Brett Favre with this whole, I'm retiring. Maybe not. And it was just like, I feel like the dude just likes the drama and just likes the excitement. Maybe he just was indecisive on his career decision because it was such a big decision. But I feel like there's always some kind of drama surrounding Aaron Rodgers. So whether he stays, retires, or is traded, somehow it's going to be dragged out all off season, and we're going to hear a lot about Aaron Rodgers. But speaking of retirements, we might as well go ahead and move on to our potential retirement of the century, and that is Tom Brady. And it's not because Tom Brady wants to quit. It's because his wife, Giselle, might force him to retire. I mean, it's not like he needs to play for any more money. It's not like he needs to play for any more Super Bowl rings or records or stats. The only thing keeping him in the game is him, the love of the game. And if Giselle's like, hey, it's time to be a dad, it's time to be a husband, then you might have to go with her.
So he is filing for divorce tomorrow?
No way. Giselle makes more money than he does.
You're right. Just a little bit of a smart comment there.
Relationship should be determined on who makes the most money. Like, I'm not trying to put that out there. But he's definitely seems like the guy that loves his wife, loves his kids. And I think that's why we're having the conversation of, is he going to retire? Because if you ask yourself, what else can Tom Brady do on a football field to make his legacy greater? The answer is absolutely nothing. The only thing he could do is say, honestly, the only thing he could do is the Packers trade Rodgers and he goes to Green Bay and literally says, and go wins the Super Bowl and looks at Aaron Rodgers and says, it's not hard to win in Green Bay. Like that is the ultimate troll could be the only thing he could do to cement his legacy. But other than that, like, he has achieved so much that I honestly do think there is some, like, I would say it's greater than 50% that Tom Brady walks away.
Man, I feel like we'd be lucky, and I know we've talked many times about the potential of Tom Brady retiring, especially when he made the team switch from New England down to Tampa Bay, and we didn't know if he was going to retire, if he was going to stay, if he was going to move to another team. This actually does feel the most real, and it's actually kind of insane to think that it's not necessarily Tom Brady's decision, but it's a family decision. And at least I would respect if he would go out by saying, it's time for me to be a dad. My wife cringes every time she sees me get hit on the football field at the time. Like, I would at least respect that being the reason he makes the decision.
Now, I think the only thing he could do to solidify his legacy at this point would be go to the Lions and win a Super Bowl. Now, that would be some nut stuff. Go to the Lions, go to the Jets, and just win a Super Bowl there. But, like, because...
Yeah, go to a team that never won a Super Bowl. I like that. That's another thing he could do. A team that's never won a Super Bowl, win it in this first year, ride out in the sunset, middle fingers to the rest of the league.
Like, but yeah, people always made excuses for Tom Brady's wins in New England because they were like, oh, well, he had these receivers. He had this amazing defense. He had Bill Belichick. And then he comes to Tampa Bay where Bruce Arians is not a great head coach. I don't care what anybody says. And people are saying
right now it's Tom Brady.
Yeah, but he has a top defense. He has Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and all these other key pieces. Like, go to a team that doesn't have any pieces and still win, and that's the only way you can make your legacy any better. But at this point, it's like you're just making yourself a further up number one of all time. You're not. There's nothing else really that's going to do it. So I don't see any reason why he should keep playing unless it really is just the love of the game. I mean, he looks healthy enough to keep playing. His stats were still there. But at this point, retire. Spend some time with your family. Start enjoying things outside of football. But there was one other retirement that we need to talk about, and it's one that we saw coming for weeks, and it is Big Ben finally officially retires. Definitely not as big of a retirement as Tom Brady. I know people are making huge deals out of it, but it's Big Ben. I think he needed to retire 3 seasons ago, and he just kept pushing for the love of the game, but his ability just wasn't there anymore. And 2 interesting things to note with Big Ben's retirement is in the AFC, the oldest remaining starting quarterback is now Ryan Tannehill, and the longest tenured AFC starting quarterback is Derek Carr.
It's hard to remember sometimes that Derek Carr's been around as long as he has, but I don't think I would have thought that without you telling me.
It's a weird note.
It's crazy, but if you think about it, Herbert, Allen, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, all under 25. Baker's 26. Yeah. Like, the AFC is loaded. We're going to get a lot of great AFC playoff games, like we saw this past week. In the years to come, another reason why jumping to the AFC might not be the best option for an old quarterback. But hey, he gets to do what he wants to do. But George, I think it's time for your favorite segment, Quotes of the Week.
And let's lead off Quotes of the Week with Big Ben Roethlisberger. More specifically, Tom Brady commenting on Ben Roethlisberger's retirement. He said, Ben defied the TB12 method in favor for the throw some ice on it method. I'm messing it up. I'm sorry. But we all know Tom Brady is a workout monster, and Ben Roethlisberger, I will admit, I did appreciate him a lot back when I was younger watching him growing up because he seemed like he played through everything. I remember many games where he played through 2 ankle sprains. He looked like he could barely stand on the sideline. He's going out there throwing balls to Heath Miller and all that. So, like, I do appreciate the fact of he really was an Iron Man to this game and played through everything.
Man, you think that's impressive? Aaron Rodgers played through a hurt pinky toe. So, I mean,
and showed it on camera.
Yeah.
He played better with his hurt pinky toe because he couldn't move. But I'm not going to get into it. We're not talking about last week's game. But speaking of the Packers, we mentioned Hackett leaving to go to the Broncos. He had his introductory press conference. He had some great lines, but he was talking about Matt LaFleur, and this one was my favorite. After he was done thanking him, he said, I'm going to make a run at being the sexiest head coach in the NFL against him. So, 1, thank you. Hackett for acknowledging the truth about it. 2, if you want our fiance/girlfriends want to do a takeover show on the podcast this offseason and rank all the head coaches, make sure you drop a comment if you're watching on YouTube or hit us up on social media. I know they would love to do that. 3, Hackett, you've already taken your first L. I loved you as a coach, but you're not passing Matt LaFleur on that one. And that's all I got to say on that quote. I love the quote, though. Great quote.
Not the best looking guy. So, yeah, I definitely don't think he's going to make any kind of run at that, but I appreciate the effort. You know, I have nothing more to say about that, except I am excited for the girlfriend/fiance takeover show discussing the hotness of coaches. And I think it's the best way to get some more female viewers onto our podcast because it's definitely an interesting one.
Yes, it is. Keep an eye out for that. We'll try to make the logistics of that one happen. I can move us on to Les Miles, who is the former LSU head coach, talking about Jamar Chase. He said, quote, "I couldn't play wide receiver when I was coming out of high school."
Okay. He told Jamar Chase this, not on Jamar Chase. He told
This is why I had the quotes and not you.
It literally says Les Miles told Jamar Chase. And then it's in quotes, Jamar Chase. "I couldn't play receiver when I was coming out of high school." It's not that hard. But anyways.
So what did he play in high school?
Les Miles didn't play anything. He told Jamar Chase when he was recruiting him that he couldn't play wide receiver. He should move to cornerback, essentially. We're talking about Jamar Chase. That guy was a head coach of a pretty good program. And this is why I don't write things. This is why this thing stopped halfway through the season, because there's so many grammatical errors and can't even do right things on rundowns. But apparently, just to clarify, because I know that was confusing, Les Miles told Jamar Chase during the recruiting process, and this is a quote from Jamar Chase saying, he said, "I couldn't play receiver when I was coming out of high school."
So he somehow convinced him to still play receiver in college and proved him wrong?
Well, Jamar Chase took over. Les Miles wasn't still the coach. He did the recruiting and then he left, and it was Ed Audrin when Jamar Chase was there. So he started the recruiting process but didn't finish the recruiting process. So there was just some issues in that. But thinking about how good Jamar Chase has been as a rookie, to think that he didn't have the talent to play wide receiver coming out of high school is mind-blowing.
Now we just totally botched
Tyler,
that
take
quote.
The last quote.
Totally botched that quote. Thank you so much for giving me the last quote. I mean, I love it so much. Evan McPherson said to the Bengals right before that game-winning kick, "Looks like we're going to go to the AFC Championship game." Good for him. Evan McPherson's had a great rookie season, but the dude's got to be careful about getting too big of a head. If you go back and look at some of the most exciting kickers in their first year or two in the league, where you're like, wow, this guy's really good, he could be something, they almost always get cut out of the league, start falling apart, become a joke by year 3 or 4. It doesn't take long for kickers to fall off in this league. It's very rare for a kicker to actually have a long tenured career where they are on one set team because they're consistent and solid. I'm not saying Evan McPherson's going to fall apart and bust, but you got to be worried about getting too big of a head. I do like the confidence, though. Don't like that he made the field goal. But, guys, I think that is enough for Quotes of the Week. Let's go ahead and get to the moment we're all waiting for, and that is the playoff games for this weekend.
Yes, why don't we break down conference championship weekend? And guys, I just want to start off with, I am disappointed there's only 3 games left because the Pro Bowl doesn't count.
Whoa. The Pro Bowl normally doesn't count, but we didn't talk about this in the news segment. We have Matt LaFleur and Mike Vrabel coaching the Pro Bowl, so this game actually means something this year for 2 of us.
Yes, it
does. And will you actually watch it?
No,
yes, I will.
Well, we got mixed reaction there.
I'll watch the skills challenge on the Thursday night, watch the dodgeball game, and then I'll probably check out.
Yeah, nobody watches the actual
that's exactly
game.
where I'm at. No. but I'm glad they brought the skills challenge back. We are getting so sidetracked. Why don't we talk some games for this weekend? Started off with the early game. Cincinnati Bengals traveling to the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, I really hope that the Chiefs used all their points up last week against the Bills, because I really don't want to see the Chiefs become the next Patriots. But I've been saying it all postseason. Maybe they're starting to prove me wrong. I don't think the Bengals are good enough to be to this point yet. So go ahead and make your argument for either side, but I feel like the Chiefs kind of drew an easy one in this one.
Wow. I mean, that's kind of harsh to the Bengals.
I've
Like,
been disrespecting the Bengals the whole playoffs, though.
give them credit. I mean, don't get me wrong. Have they had some close fought games against the Raiders and the Titans, but they found a way to pull through, just like they did a few weeks
Yeah.
ago against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, would I pick the Bengals? Nah, I'm gonna pick the Chiefs. They're rolling. They're just rolling at this point. You know, the game of the playoffs was last week against the Bills. I could see a total letdown this week. You could also see the opposite, though. If I'm gonna, try to hype up for the few Bengals fans out there, there's often those games every year that you get so hyped up for. The energy is crazy that can cause a letdown the following week or a loss. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs come out a little sluggish after that hard fought game a week ago and the Bengals are able to jump up to, a 14-0 lead or something like that. And the Chiefs will have to try to make it back. It'll be an interesting game. That's what I think is need for the Bengals. Maybe they can rely on Joe Mixon to, slow the game down and keep it out of Patrick Mahomes' hand. But this does also line up to be another shootout. And as long as the Bengals keep giving up as many sacks as they are, it's hard to project them to win a game.
Yeah, I don't think the Chiefs' defensive front gets after the quarterback quite as heavily as the Titans do. I think the Titans' defensive front has been, when they have all four of their front, has been one of the strongest defensive fronts in the league this year. And they were top 10 in sacks all year long. They finished second in the league, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But I don't think the Bengals are going to give up quite as many sacks as they did this past week. If I got to hype up the Bengals, what they got to do is not, like, every NFL commentator in the world is going to be like, you got to find a way to slow down Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. It's not going to happen. Look, Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill are two of the best in the league. They're very athletic. You can't stop them. You can try to slow them down, but you're probably not going to do that either. And it's not going to be, hey, you need to outscore the Chiefs. Go in a complete shootout and hope you outscore them. That's not it either. What the Bengals got to do is exactly what they did to the Titans, and they got to find a way to create turnovers. If they can get Mahomes to throw 2 picks, if they can get some of these Chiefs players to start fumbling the ball a little bit, which is possible, then suddenly the momentum shifts to your side and you have that chance to outscore them. The Bengals only put up really not much points. They only have 1 offensive touchdown against the Titans. But they do still have that offensive firepower. The Chiefs defense isn't holding people down quite as strongly as the Titans were. But the Chiefs offense is better. This is going to be more of a shootout than last week. Completely different type of game than what they're used to. But if they can create those turnovers, make a few force the Chiefs to make a few mistakes, they do have a chance in this game. If the NFL has proved anything to us this year, it's that anything can happen and no team can ever be counted out.
And that's true. And I think on the opposite side of that too, protecting the ball's got to be important because we know the Chiefs don't have the greatest defense. We've been preaching that most of the season, but they have some playmakers that just get key interceptions and can force a fumble, blow up a play for a big sack. Like, they're the definition of the bend don't break defense. So part of it is, forcing them into the mistakes, like you said. The other part of it is making sure that you take care of the ball, play smart football. Don't get in your head if you're Joe Burrow and you're running on a high and then you try to force some throws you shouldn't. So I think overall it's just winning the turnover battle is going to be what Cincinnati has to do to win the game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be which team learned the most from their matchup a few weeks ago. We watched Jamar Chase continually be single covered on the outside with little to no safety help, and he ate them alive. Do they roll coverage over to him? Does that mean it's going to be a big game for a guy like T. Higgins, who suffered from some drops as late as last week? Tyler Boyd, old reliable, is he going to make an impact? Daniel Sorensen has given up some big plays across the middle of the field. Could we see a couple big plays from Uzama? For me, the Bengals, if they're going to win this game, it's got to be someone other than Jamar Chase has to step up. And they might be deeper from a talent perspective, not as high end. They might be deeper than the Kansas City Chiefs on offense. Now, it's not, like I said, it's not the same at the top end, but if they need those other guys, it can't be the Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow show. It has to be the Cincinnati Bengals offense. And, sometimes those teams that you don't expect, the New York Giants always come to mind, the Philadelphia Eagles, those teams that everyone rules out each week, and they just find a way. This is what the Bengals remind me of. So, I do think it's a long shot, but I don't think you can write the Bengals off like this is an easy win for the Chiefs.
Yep. I mean, I agree with you there. And for the Chiefs to win, they kind of just have to play their game. So I don't think there's much more to add for this one. You guys can cut me off if you want to, but otherwise I'm going to move on to the nightcap. The San Francisco 49ers traveling to Los Angeles to face the Rams. And I believe that I heard earlier that this is the Rams attempting to be the first team to play the conference championship and the Super Bowl in their home stadium in the same season. So I'm sure the people setting up for the Super Bowl love the fact that there is a Rams home game this week. But San Francisco not having to travel far. They're running off of a high here, running through the NFC. They get to play in a dome in a warm weather stadium. So we thought that weather was going to be a factor in the NFC, having to go through Green Bay, and San Francisco kind of solved that issue. This also, I guess we have to mention the third meeting between the two teams. This is very interesting. The last time they played was week 18, and San Francisco had their last drive come back to get themselves into the playoffs. You can kind of look at this game to go either way. I'm going to lean the Rams because I think that they're the deeper team. I think Cooper Kupp still got more in him. I trust Matt Stafford a little bit more than Jimmy Garoppolo, but I know that Matt Stafford has his own turnover issues. Guys, just where are you at on this one?
Cody, go ahead. You got an up close personal view of the 49ers this past week, so.
Yeah, so the 49ers, I'm actually going to turn around and ask you guys a question.
Okay.
How long ago do you think it was that the Rams beat the 49ers? How many games in a row do you think the 49ers have beat the Rams?
I'll go with 4.
3.
It is 6. The Rams have not won since 2018 over the 49ers. They seem to have their number. They have been swept in 2019, 2020, and 2021.
In 2020, the Niners won, 4 games?
Yeah, I think
they seemed like something like that.
4 or 5 games, and 2 of them were against the Rams.
Wow.
They have their number, whether it's Kyle Shanahan's and Sean McVay's head, whether it's just they're so close-knit, their offense are so similar, they have each other's number. But this is what the Rams signed up for. They went out and got Von Miller. They went out and got Odell Beckham Jr. They brought Eric Weddle out of retirement for 2 years after not playing for 2 seasons to get to the Super Bowl. And to do that, they have to beat a team they've lost the last 6 times they've played. The 49ers are coming in a little banged up. Now, Trent Williams is supposed to play, but he left the game on crutches. Deebo Samuel was a little banged up. He's not limited or anything like that, but he's coming to the game banged up. We know about Jimmy G's thumb. We know that George Kittle was limping a little bit after the game. This 49ers team has essentially been playing playoff games for weeks now, dating back into the second half of the regular season because they started out so poorly. They're battled, they've been tested. They're ready to go. It's up for the Rams to overcome this hurdle that they can't seem to get over. And I do know it was pretty interesting that they were trying to limit the number of 49ers fans that were allowed to buy tickets, because if you look back at that Week 18 game, that was the San Francisco 49ers home game. And if that's like that again on this Sunday, I don't know how the Rams, I know it seems extremely hard to beat a team 3 times in one season, but the way the 49ers are playing, I know the Rams are playing well, but they almost gave up a 27-3 comeback against Obviously, it was Tom Brady, but against the Bucks. So I don't think you can rule the 49ers out.
No, I don't think you can rule the 49ers out. In fact, I'm actually going to say that I am picking the 49ers to win. I think everybody is so blinded by the Rams putting up big numbers lately that we just, like, you just said it. The 49ers have had the Rams number. Like, yes, the 49ers don't look like the flashier team. And yes, the Rams look like the more exciting team. Um, but the Rams keep losing to the 49ers. Not only the Rams, but Matt Stafford keeps losing to the 49ers. Now, we know that he's 0-2 against the 49ers this year, but did you guys know that in 6 games in his career against the 49ers, he's 1-5?
Woo.
He's not good against the 49ers in his career. Now, I understand he was on the Lions, and I understand that the Lions are not a strong team. But now, even with the weapons around him, he's still not beating the 49ers. There's something about them that is not only the Rams' kryptonite, but it's his kryptonite as well. And I think Stafford has a bad issue of trying to make things happen uh, that kind of gets him into trouble. Now, I know I always come back to the Titans because it's just who I am, but I think that's exactly what Ryan Tannehill's issue was this past week. He kept trying to make things happen when it wasn't there. He forced passes, caused interceptions, and that's what lost him the game. I think this is going to be a close-fought battle, but I think it's going to come down to Stafford making a few errant plays or errant throws, and that's going to cost him in the end. We saw them in the final week of the regular season, and the 49ers went up big, and it was like, wow, the Rams went up big, and the 49ers looked like they had no shot to win that game, and they just stayed in it, came back, fought, won. Like, it just, uh, I don't know. I think that the Rams are going to have a rude awakening. I don't trust Stafford to lead them in this game. I'm going with the 49ers to win.
I
Yeah,
mean, it's essentially a toss-up for me, so I could see it, but I don't know. I don't want to compare the 49ers. I'm talking about the Bengals. Cody, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I definitely could see the 49ers. Maybe it's just a weird, but it took 53 years for a team to play a home game in their Super Bowl. And now we have potential to do it 2 years in a row. Like, what are the odds of that? Like, that's just another thing against I mean, it's out of everyone's control, but that's just another thing when you're thinking about the game, those kind of streaks like that have you feeling the 49ers. You mentioned Matt Stafford as, one of the reasons, but you do have to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't have his exact stats in front of me, but he has no touchdown passes this postseason. He has 2 interceptions this postseason, and he has a pretty low passer rating. He hasn't been effective. They've won on games on their defense and their run game. So Jimmy Garoppolo is going to give the Rams opportunities for turnovers. He's going to give the Rams opportunities to shorten drives. They just have to take advantage of it. He did the same thing against the Packers, but they weren't able to take advantage of it. And the 49ers defense is playing lights out, and they do probably have the best front four in football with a healthy Nick Bosa. Now the Rams are getting Andrew Whitworth back, so I think this game is going to be exciting. I don't know if I don't think either of these games are going to match the excitement we had of last weekend, which is unfortunate. I still think they're going to be a good game, but I tend at this moment to lean the 49ers as well.
So we're going to cancel this weekend's game. We're going to call back the Bills, and we're going to make the Super Bowl a best of 7 between the Bills and the Chiefs.
Hey, I tweeted out during that game, give the winner the Lombardi. Like, that was how great that game was. So
they deserved it from an entertainment standpoint, let alone anything else.
Yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo was 16 for 25 for 172 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick against the Cowboys. And I think that's more of the area that you can focus on here. I think the Packers defense is better than the Rams defense, at least against the pass. So I try not to fault them too much. That game was just a defensive battle the whole way through. And I mean, the 49ers ended up winning because of special teams. So I don't think special teams is going to win them this game, but I don't fault Jimmy Garoppolo too much off of last week. I would look more at his first week, which was not great, but also 16 for 25 isn't the worst either.
But I mean, so then we can always talk about like the 49ers have always been a run first team regardless. Like Jimmy Garoppolo is almost just told to take care of the ball in that offense. So Eli Mitchell's had a fantastic season. Debo, the running back and the wide receiver, has also just been fantastic. We talked about him as a borderline MVP candidate. So I don't even know if you want to look at Garoppolo. Do those two alone let you stand up to the amount of points that the Rams could score on you?
No. The Rams could put up 40 points. Like, they have the offense to do it. Will they? That's probably a long shot for them to hit 40. Like, it's probably going to be in the mid 20s to low 30s would be my guess, which I don't think you can do solely on the run game. I think Jimmy G is going to have to make, he might not have to make 12 throws. He might only have to make 5. But can he make those 5s without causing turnovers? There will be a moment in the game, and this is my opinion, that Jimmy G, it might be a 3rd and 9 late in the 4th quarter or something like that. And if he completes it, they're going to win the game. If not, it's going to be up to the defense, which you have that defense, which is still good enough to win you a game. But I think Jimmy G can also lose you the game. But I think we've seen it all season. Matt Stafford, he's played lights out, and then he's also thrown like 3 of the top 5 dumbest interceptions on the season. Him and Carson Wentz were just trading dumbest interceptions. Well, and then Kyler Murray, his against the Rams, that was like skyrocketed number 1. So this game is so fascinating because it's literally like, elite offensive weapons, elite defenses, and then 2 quarterbacks that are decent. They're good. I think Matt Stafford is better, but I'm not going to have that argument because Snyder might disagree. But that we're both worried about them, like that game-saving interception. And in this playoffs, you can't play scared. They got to go out there and ball out. So, because whichever one ends up, I don't want to say playing scared. I feel like that's, criticizing them in the wrong way. But, if one of them plays too conservative, it could end to their team losing.
Yeah, I think these two teams match up really well on offense. I mean, Stafford to Garoppolo, I'll agree with you. I think Stafford is the better quarterback, but he does make a lot of mistakes, and so does Jimmy Garoppolo. It really depends on who makes less mistakes. At running back, Eli Mitchell has shown flashes of being super exciting this year. Cam Akers looks really good in the playoffs. I can't believe he's playing as well as he is coming off an injury, so those two match up pretty well. Wide receiver 1, Debo and Cooper Kupp have been the 2 most exciting wide receivers in the league this year, except maybe Jamar Chase. But you can make arguments about that all day. And then on the other side, you have Brandon Eyuk and Odell Beckham. Again, you can make an argument. Eyuk has gone cold some weeks, but Odell Beckham has definitely gone cold too at certain points this season. Since he's found his new team, he's really opened up and really started to look like the Odell of old, but Eyuk is really starting to find his stride too late in the season. So I think the big X factor that gives the 49ers a bit of an edge is tight end. George Kittle to Tyler Higbee is not a comparison. It's easily Kittle. So I think that gives them a slight edge there, but the Rams have slight edges on the other positions. So these two offenses match up really well. And then you're talking about defense. You got the Rams, who have a strong pass rush. You're talking about Jalen Ramsey, who shuts down number 1 receivers. But then on the other side, the 49ers just held down one of the best wide receivers in the NFL in Devontae Adams for an entire game. And Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams didn't do much last week. Like, they dominated the game, but they couldn't score. They couldn't do enough to score. So it shows that defense can hold a high-powered offense down, and that's what the Rams are. So I think people are overlooking the 49ers a little bit too much. It's definitely not as one-sided as the other game is. I think this one's going to be a really close one. And like I said, I think it's going to come down to turnovers.
I'm with you. You mentioned it. They stopped the Packers on 5 straight. They had 5 straight 3-and-outs. I mean, Devontae still had his 9 catches for almost 100 yards. So as you're playing the playoff challenge and you have Cooper Kupp, he's probably still going to get his catches. He's still going to get his yards. But the end zone is going to be, they're really good at locking down when it gets close. So definitely like the 49ers. I would go with the 49ers over the Rams. I think the Rams have every much of an opportunity to win this game, but I think the 49ers are just playing so well at the moment. It's almost like they're the team that got hot right before the playoffs. They found a way to get in, and now they're running the NFC. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I
So I'll
agree
be
with
the
you,
lone
Cody.
guy to
And
pick the
I would
Rams here.
say that right now you're looking at a similar situation on both. You have your favorites are the Rams, you have your favorites are the Chiefs. And I think both of those teams could argue to be the better team in the matchup. Um, but the team whose quarterback starts with J, both of them are playing with heart. I think they have the most heart out of the entire playoffs, and sometimes that's all it takes. Like, I hate Nick Foles with a passion. I don't like him as a quarterback, but that dude played with heart for the Eagles. The Eagles were not the best team in the playoffs, and the whole team just had some kind of passion about them and some kind of heart that led them to a Super Bowl victory.
It was the words
So
of
you
Meek
can't.
Mill.
So you cannot count out either of the J quarterbacks or the Bengals. You can't count out the 49ers. They're playing with heart. They're playing with passion. It's going to be exciting football. Not Chiefs Bills
Definitely, I
exciting,
hope.
but exciting.
We can wish that all games would be that exciting, but I'll even take the rest of the weekend exciting because there was just a good set of games last weekend. So I'll take 2 of those games anytime. But I
George,
think that'll wrap up
George,
our.
what's your final
Sorry, go
pick?
ahead. Rams,
Rams, and what's the other one? I'm going to ask Tyler too.
Chiefs.
So your Rams, Chiefs, Tyler, your
I'm going to go Chiefs
49ers
and 49ers.
Okay, and I'm 49ers and Chiefs as well, as much as I would love the Bengals. But this is either going to make me feel worse or make me feel better. And I'm only asking you, George.
Mhm.
Last week we saw the unprecedented both number 1 seeds go down. If you can blame whatever you want.
Mhm.
But if it was Chiefs, Titans, and Rams, Packers, would you still have the same prediction?
No,
won't be
I mean,
upset.
I was no,
We
I
won't be
mean,
upset.
you saw how high I was on both 1 seeds last week, so them winning just would have probably, pushed that mindset even further. I probably would have picked both the 1 seeds.
Yep, and now we get to watch our coaches coach in the Super Bowl. But before I cut George
Nope,
off,
you have to watch him coach in the
I
Pro
wish
Bowl
we were
'cause
coaching the Super Bowl.
look, I was so prepared. If who cares? We're already going long enough. I had like the perfect track for the Cheesehead TV hype video that I found in like week 7. I'm like, I'm saving this one for the Super Bowl. Saving this one for the Super Bowl. It was perfect. Oh, don't get to use it. Heartbreaking loss, but I'll still watch our coaches in the Pro Bowl. But before we go, George was starting to get there before I cut him off. We still have to discuss our NFL playoff challenge.
NFL playoff challenge. We do have some guys to replace in our lineup this week, but I'm going to start it off with the leaderboard. Reminder, everybody, if your name is not your team name, please make it that, because we are going to invite the winner onto the podcast if we can figure out who you are. That means you, Bo ... whoever you are. They are currently the leader with 403 points. We got my girlfriend Bree in second at 362. Cody's fiance Jen at 358 in third. And then the Couch GMs are tied with Sean at 351, fourth place. To update where the rest of us are, Cody is in 13th, Tyler is in 14th, and I am in 16th. So we're pretty far down there, but a lot of it depends on multipliers at this point. So we'll see how much that leaderboard shakes up going into week 3. It did not shake up a whole ton going through week 2. But we have to talk our team, guys. So we're down to 4 players. We have times 3s out of Patrick Mahomes, Jamar Chase, Travis Kelce, and Evan McPherson. So we have 2 running backs, a wide receiver, and a defense to fill.
We do,
Well,
George.
last week, George had it was your turn to make a pick, and you made a pick, but it was a only if Fournette doesn't go pick, and Fournette did play, so your pick ended up not counting. So, George, why don't you start us off with your pick this week?
All right, so for this week, I have to look at this. So we unfortunately are not going to have 4 times 4s going into the Super Bowl because we have 2 from the Chiefs and 2 from the Bengals. So I feel like I want to try to pick somebody on one of those two teams, and I'm really struggling where to go. So I could go wide receiver and go with the easy choice in Tyreek Hill, but there's probably a lot of people that have Tyreek Hill now on ×3. We would have him on ×2 in the Super Bowl. That's a little bit rough. And then the Chiefs aren't exactly deep at wide receiver otherwise. And then we got the Bengals, where we already have Jamar Chase. We could double that up with T. Higgins. That's something that I'm debating. But I think I'm just going to go with the running back, and I'm going to give us Joe Mixon. I'm going to triple us up on the Bengals here, even though I think the Chiefs go a little bold. I'm thinking maybe some people who are trying to make replacements here into this week are going to lean Chiefs. So hopefully the Bengals for our playoff challenge team will help us out.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm stunned. You pick
I
the
did
Chiefs to
not
win the
see that
game,
coming.
and then you pick a Bengal player.
I think in playoff challenge, a lot of times you have to not only pick players who are good in fantasy, which Mixon probably is the top back left, but you have to pick against what a lot of people will think. Because a lot of people are going to say, oh, if the Chiefs are going to move on, I'm going to pick a Chief to get double. You almost have to go against it and hope that you end up flipping the script on them and you get the double and they have to replace somebody.
Good night. Love you too. That was my dad going to bed, for anyone that heard that one. But yeah, George, I get what you're saying. I just feel like it's not my pick. It's Tyler's pick, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, before Tyler makes his pick, and I question that one too, I get what you're saying, but Joe Mixon is 60% started this week. So it just feels like he already has a lot of people picking him. Are we going to be picking another running back next week? Is, a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which we still could actually pick him if we wanted to, but, even on a ×2, worth it against a ×3 compared to two people on a one time. So that's just all stuff you have to think about in your head when you're making these picks. But I've talked long enough, especially since it's Tyler's pick.
Yeah, definitely interesting, George. Not where I thought you were going to go. When you said that you don't want to pick the number one player, you kind of want to go with the number two. I really thought you were going to go Brandon Eyuk at wide receiver. Go with a guy that's less owned, but still has that potential to make it to that Super Bowl and still has that potential to put up big points. I also like, if you're going to go with that mentality, but you pick the Rams, going Odell Beckham. I feel like everyone has Cooper Kupp, so if you went with an Odell Beckham, that gives you a chance to give an edge over everybody else. Another great receiver, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel, all awesome picks here. And I really do believe that the 49ers are going to win this game. However, it is pretty close to a 50-50 toss-up. So I'm not afraid to pick a Ram. So with all that being said, and so many great wide receiver options, I'm going to pick a running back so that Cody is forced to have to pick that wide receiver, or George again. And I am going to go with Cam Akers. I love what he is doing in the playoffs. I think the Rams have that chance to make the Super Bowl. This gives us one Ram on ×2 points if they do make it all the way. And yeah, give me Cam Akers. I like him a little bit better than Elijah Mitchell.
Wow. Nice. Didn't see that one coming either. Interesting. I like the Cam Akers. He's been playing lights out. I still would have went a running back. I still would have went Clyde Edwards-Helaire because we were all confident that the Chiefs were going to make it. I don't think a lot of people were picking Chiefs running backs through the first couple of weeks, so I feel like we would have got them on a even playing field. So that's where I was going to go. But you leave me with the wide receiver and the defense, and this is where I'm torn. Because like you mentioned, guys like Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill, whoever we face in the championship round, most likely has that guy on ×4. Now, I do think they are the guys to own on those two teams. So is it worth adding them to cut the deficit in half? Because we'll only get them in at ×2. So I'm debating that strategy. Do I add a 49er in a guy like Deebo Samuel? I don't trust going with Brandon Eyuk, but the Deebo Samuel's the same thing. There's probably quite a few people that had him, but maybe not because they've been the underdogs the whole way. So people might not have added them week 1, so we might not get the full ×4, especially with a guy like Devontae Adams going out, which was I own in like 80% of leagues starting in week 1. A lot of great options. I'm going to pass on the defense because in my personal league, I've picked 2 defenses now, and I can't seem to pick one that survives. Sorry, I picked the Titans defense last week. It's my fault, Snyder. Don't hate me for life.
You got good points out of them, though.
Yeah, they had the 9 sacks, so definitely got some decent points. With wide receiver, though, man, I feel like I gave George such a hard time for picking the
Packers. Yes, you did.
No, picking Joe Mixon after you said the Chiefs were going to win. But I am really starting to think about the Odell Beckham, even though me and Tyler are both on the 49ers, which seems crazy that we would then pivot to picking Rams. But looking at his stats, he's only 4% started or selected. He's been catching touchdowns. We might potentially get him at +2 if we're wrong, which I've been wrong all season long, so it wouldn't surprise me there. I think he would be, if I go Odell Beckham, I feel like that would be our home, like our swing for the fences pick. Like I could go chalk, go Cooper Kupp, and keep us close, but I'll do it. I'll go ahead and go Odell Beckham Jr. as the guy that could either make us fall all the way to last or could bring us to the top. So Odell Beckham Jr. And now we don't have a Chief or a 49er added, even though we picked them both to win. We're doing great at this, guys.
Well, I guess that leaves me with the defense. And I'm just going to go along with the Rams theme here that you guys started out with, because we don't have any 49ers. We might as well hope the Rams go to the Super Bowl at this point. So I'm going to pick the Rams defense. It's not a bad choice anyway. They have a solid defense. They have a decent fantasy defense this season. And we're just going to hope that they get to the Super Bowl to get us 3 of those ×2 points. And we'll see where we go from there.
All right. I like it. And we should probably also be rooting for the Bengals too, because I imagine there's a ton of people that picked Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes week 1. So
Tyreek Hill is the big one that would kill us, I think, in the Super Bowl.
That is right. So that's what I'm saying. If the Bengals win, we can knock out some of those guys and, get a guy like Jamar Chase, who wasn't as percentage owned ×4, Evan McPherson ×4, Joe Mixon ×2. So we're definitely rooting for an upset in the AFC and the chalk pick in the NFC, even though 2 of us picked the opposite results and the other one picked half of those results when we did the picks a few minutes ago.
Playoff Challenge is a very interesting game of strategy, especially after that first initial week of picks. So it's almost like you have to swing for the fences if you have some people getting knocked out, which is why I like the OBJ pick. Akers, honestly, not a lot of people probably had him early because they were concerned about the injury. So having him on ×2 in the Super Bowl is probably going to be about the norm for a lot of people. So good picks there. And then Mixon hopefully just knocks off the rust of anybody who might have him on ×4.
Hopefully, but then we'll at least get half those points. But I think that wraps up this week's episode. I apologize, a little long-winded. But I missed last week. I missed the guy, so definitely talked more than my third. So thank you for putting up with that, and thank you guys for listening to another episode.
And guys, you obviously have a chance to play along with us in the playoff challenge. And like I said before, the winner is going to be invited onto the podcast to brag about how amazing they are. Unless your name is Bo ... and you don't tell us who you really are, then we can't invite you. However, there's plenty more ways to get involved. Comment on our social media, talk some smack. Let us know who you think is going to win. Let us know what we said right, what we said wrong. And check out our website, thecouchgms.com. Either way, this podcast is so much more fun for us and more fun for you when you get involved.
Yes, it is, Tyler. And don't worry, next week is the Pro Bowl, but we will be back to talk some conference championship games, and we might have a little bit of a way too early mock draft coming for you. So make sure you tune in next week. We are still going to be here. Thank you all one more time for listening in to the Couch GMs Podcast. For Cody Roadcap and Tyler Snyder, I'm George Kerth, and we'll see you all next week.
Boom.
dear.
He really
Jesus.
boomed.